Welcome to Voice of Supply Chain, brought to you by ISM New Jersey and SourceDay. The purpose of our show is to tell stories of extraordinary people in supply chain. Today, really fitting, given that it is International Women's Day, and we have one of my favorite females in the industry on the show. So did not plan that. It just worked out and was perfect. So I'm your host, Scudder. I oversee marketing at SourceDay. Our supply chain software prevents late part deliveries for manufacturers to prevent production lines from being shut down. If you want more intel on what's happening in the supply chain world, you can connect with me on LinkedIn and follow my hashtags Manufacturing Maven and Women in ERP. Today, our guest is Barb, and her and I have known each other, I want to say maybe 8-9 years.
I would agree.
It's been quite a long time. We have been road warriors together, attended conferences, lobby crashed, trekked around trade shows, hung with her mom, her daughter. So excited to actually have her on the show so she can share her personal journey with us today. So Barb, I always like to start the show going way back in time. You may have forgotten some of these things or maybe blocked them out as well.
But I've forgotten about last week, so let's see how it goes.
So we're gonna go back in time and chat a little bit about your childhood. And while we're doing that, I would like to welcome all of our live audience members and participants. So those of you who are joining us live, feel free to drop in the chat where in the world you're joining us from. We typically get a pretty diverse and global audience, so it's always fun to see. So drop us the city and state of where you're at. And then if you want to give a shout out to Barb or tell us how you are feeling today, drop that note in the comment as well. So Barb, what in your childhood shaped you to be the person you are today? So think way back.
All right. So I'm going to get us started with a little bit of raw information about myself. So I come from a background of abuse and trauma, and it was a challenging journey, right? So I've learned to heal and grow from that experience. And when I look back at my childhood, I feel that has made me, or taught me rather, to be a very strong-willed, independent, very strong person. So I have been grateful for the resiliency and the teachings of growing up in that type of environment. And it's definitely, I believe, the most important thing that, it's made me who I am today.
And I would also argue it's made you the parent you are today as well.
I thank you so much, Sarah. And I absolutely believe that. It was my partner in crime there, Mr. Pat Sexton. Our number one goal was to be the parents that we did not have. And I would like to say, I would hope that Emerald and my boys would absolutely agree.
So I want to welcome a few of our live guests. We've got Michael Walsh joining us from Atlanta. We've got someone joining us from Jupiter, Florida, and we've got John joining us from Clearwater, Florida. John's actually coming on as a guest later in the year, so glad he's able to tune in.
Nice.
So Barb, given that you had a tough childhood and you had to overcome and deal with a lot of trauma, who would you say is the most influential person in your childhood and why?
So my little brother. So he's since passed. He passed away when I was 25. Again, not a great upbringing. So a whole nother story and so forth. But he was born with a double cleft lip and palate. So basically, this whole area of his face was open. And since the time he was born, I was 5 years older than him. He had to go through many, many surgeries, rebuilding, facial construction, etc. And as you can imagine, when he grew up and he went to school, that was very challenging. Kids, little guys, I hope, I pray, I believe that things are getting much better in this day and age, right? But in that time, in the early 70s, late 70s, now I'm dating myself for all of America to have the globe to hear. That's tough. Kids are teased, and it was very rough, and he just had a hard go at it. And me being the big sister, I learned a ton from that. I learned to be kind and loving and caring. And he was such a strong boy and really put up with a lot that I would say he was my childhood, the most influential person in my life as a child. I didn't have anyone to look up to, so I looked down younger to that growth and influence.
And what did that teach you about overcoming people's perception and judgments? Because that's a pretty major thing to look at and have to walk around town in public.
It is. And I mean, the corny saying, or the very true saying is, right, you look at the person's inside, not what's outside. So it's not race or gender. Yay, International Women's Day, right? It should be Women's Year. It's not race, gender. It's about what's inside a person's heart and being that makes a person what they are. And you just can't look at the surface of anyone and know not only who they are, but what they're going through or how they approach life. So
it makes me think back when I went to Sonoma State for college. It's a little tiny school in wine country in California. And I moved into the dorm. There was 3 in one room, 2 in the other. Thank goodness I was in the room with 2, because 3 is a lot. And my roommate's dad showed up without an arm. And it was the first experience I had had. I didn't see that a lot as a child. I grew up in a very, very small town, and one of the nicest, most amazing people I've ever met. But it was something that, I mean, I became very close with my roommate and her family, and heard his story. He was actually a war veteran and lost his arm in the war. But learning about the trauma that he experienced in life by not having an arm and had to use a prostate with a hook on the end to be able to function. So it kind of similar but different, but it makes me think of that experience.
I think all the differences, something that you can see from the outside, right, is probably a little more easy for us to understand, and hope that we're all learning from that. And I believe it really helps us to focus as individuals that are, I guess, blessed to experience and build relationships with that type of, something that you can see visually, hopefully strengthens us as individuals to then be able to look even deeper and further into the hearts of folks, and rather than the outside appearance, right?
Yeah.
So again, I'm not ashamed. I don't know that I would change the way I was brought up, because I really value who I am today because of all of those experiences, those relationships, that understanding and learning opportunity from my little brother, or from, the way we were raised, etc.
So that then begs the question, what's the one thing you learned as an adult
that you wish you knew as a kid? And I'm sure there's a lot, but let's pick one. Really I mean, we can go on for the rest of the yeah. I think that this is my life, right? It's awesome. Everything's going to be okay. Everything's awesome. I'm going to meet great people like Miss Sarah Scudder and, you know, all these great colleagues that I work with. And I have, you know, the 3 beautiful children and 2 grandbabies and a fantastic husband and partner in life, that everything's going to be okay. So, you know, I'm learning that every day. And I wish I would have known that as a kid, along with so many other things, right? Pay attention in school. Don't be such a chitter chatter. All those things too.
So what did you do? So you graduated high school, which is kind of a big deal given your upbringing. What did you do?
I was the first in my family ever to graduate from high school.
I feel like that should be celebrated and called out.
Thank you.
What did you do after graduating high school?
I left town, literally. I drove down to, so I was born in Los Angeles, but I went to school, about 5th grade, high school, grew up in Spokane, Washington, where it snows and it's awful. So I took off, went back down to California to the Pacific Palisades to be a nanny for these twin toddler boys. And it was fantastic.
So one of the things that stands out a lot about your story is that you married super young, what I would consider to be, let me phrase that, super young. And then you started a big career later in life. So how come if you're comfortable sharing, I'd like to hear the story of how you met the hubby and why you married so young.
So why I married so young, Sarah, you've met Pat. He was a good catch. He was convincing young man. So when I met him when I was 19, he's a little bit younger. We won't go into this is rated G, so we're gonna keep it clear here. I met him and he's so funny, and I fell in love. And honestly, all I wanted was to have babies. Since I was a little girl, I've always wanted children. I didn't necessarily want a husband. I wanted children. He wasn't having any of that, right? Because he had grew up in not a great, whatever. And so anyways, he wanted to be a dad. So he convinced me that we were going to get married. We were going to have 2 boys, a girl and a boy. We're going to have these 4 kids. And
wait, girl, boy, girl, boy?
2 boys, a girl, and then another boy.
Oh, wow. He was very particular.
Yes. This was, believe it or not, this was shared with me on the first night we met. This was all going to happen. And lo and behold, 34 years later, we are married. We have 2 boys, a girl. Now we've had some boy dogs, but after I had my baby girl, I was done. We wanted to have children. I wanted to start having babies right away, very young. I had my first at 20. All were planned, probably not smartly, but planned. Had my 2 boys, my girl, and then I was done. I just wanted that baby girl who you had the opportunity to meet and know, Miss Emerald Sexton. And it's been just a fabulous ride.
So you got married young. Your husband had every little thing planned out in your life and kind of cool that some of it actually kind of happened the
Yeah.
way that he did.
We've had a lot of boy dogs as the fourth.
So I feel like that kind of counts.
Yeah, it does. It does. Yeah.
So you were also, which you didn't mention in the story, the wife of somebody working in the military. Now, I do not come from a military family. It's not something I have any knowledge of, but I know it's a very, very different lifestyle. So what was it like being married to somebody in the military?
So he went into the military after we were married, and it was a joint decision after we were married and after we had our first son, Christopher. And so he was very young. He tested very high and went into the Army. Our first duty station, as a very young couple, right? Very new, just have this baby. Our first duty station was Hawaii, which most people are like, oh my gosh, wonderful, right? But it's very expensive in Hawaii. He went in as enlisted person. He was, he wasn't out of college, couldn't be an officer. So he went in and enlisted, and then went to college through his military, the beginning of his military career. And we bounced around. I've lived in, I know on your post, 7 different states. We had our second 2 kids in Hawaii when we were stationed there. But being married and being in the military, it really builds resilience. And I think it's amazing for children to raise children in the military. And let me just share, it's because we were moving every 2 to 3 years. Moving. So for me personally, right, not while the babies were young, I did take the opportunity. I was blessed enough to be able to hang at home with the kids when they were little. But just getting to raise those kids around different cultures, different states, different people from all over the world are in the military, right? Because you have joint forces on the bases, etc. So our kids were raised around the ability to pack up, move, integrate, meet the folks that you live around, and really not see race or gender or anything, just to meet and build a relationships every 2 to 3 years. You're just consistently rebuilding. So that's really, and it was tough too, because he was also, if y'all recall, the first Desert Storm, deployed right after, probably when my second son was about a month old. He deployed, so I was on my own with the 2 babies for a good 6 months, and that's tough. But there's also such a sense of community in the military. And there's wives groups, mothers at that time. Now I bet you it's a bunch of parents, because there's such a great influx of stay-at-home dads these days. But at that time, it was really a bunch of young females, right, that would get together. And again, that sense of community to make it through until the husbands come home and that kind of thing. So it's a really interesting, the military is really interesting. So, but there were a lot of learning experiences growing up in that environment, because basically he was in for 21 years. So was able to retire real young.
What would you say was the hardest part of being a mom, and that may or may not correlate to being a military wife?
It is tough. I mean, there's so many things that's hard about being a mom, right? I would say that the toughest part of being a mom, not related to the military, just hands down, the toughest part And this happens more when they're young teenagers, and it's probably very similar for a father as well, is their broken hearts. So having a child's heartbroken, something that you can't fix or put a Band-Aid on, is I think the hardest part of motherhood, and letting go. I may or may not have had a hard time with my kids going off to college and moving out of the house, you know? So I think that's the hardest part of being a mom, is not being able to fix their heart.
So you were a stay-at-home mom for how many years?
Until Emerald was about, it's so hard. I think she was 2.5-ish. And Sarah, she said to me, all right, Mom, you go to work because I want to go to school. I was like, what? Literally, she wanted to go to the school with the boys, and so it was time for Mom to get a job. And I started exploring, okay, guess I better time to go to work.
Not often that you hear someone starting their career because their 2-year-old tells them to get a job.
No. I thought it was supposed to be the other way around.
Hashtag boss lady. Hence the strong, beautiful woman that your daughter is today.
Thank you.
So tell me about your first job.
So not my first job. We won't talk about my Wendy's experience in school.
First job when you started, okay, I'm gonna go pursue a career.
Yeah, it was so exciting. So, and I never would have dreamed about this. So there's Memorial Medical Center. It's a little small. We were stationed at White Sands Missile Range when this all happened, and Emerald told me to get to work. And there was a Memorial Medical Center, which is in Las Cruces, New Mexico, right over the hills of the White Sands Missile Range. If any of you ever have the opportunity to go to White Sands National Monument in New Mexico, one of the most amazing, beautiful places to visit and experience. So anyways, about 30 minutes over the mountain, there was, and I honestly, talk about memory, I cannot remember how I found out about a compensation and benefits generalist position, an HR position, was open at the hospital. Now, mind you, I have some college experience. I didn't finish college, a little bit of community college, and just a very bossy background, a leadership quality. And I applied. I have no idea why I applied or whatever, but anyways, I got the position. Long story short, got the role, and it was phenomenal. I fell in love with HR, and you know, the experience of getting to you know, go to work and have something and own something and experience. I thought it was very fascinating to get involved in compensation. So building out job descriptions, making sure the benefits and the total rewards, you know, which wasn't called that at the time, the personnel, you know, were taken care of through their benefits program, and better align compensation bands and things of that nature. And it was just a blast. And I was a lower level, like a generalist role, but it was such a learning experience. And I truly fell in love with HR at the time.
So you've had a unique, I feel like everyone in supply chain has some sort of unique random chance that happens, right? Not a lot of us go to school and choose a career in supply chain. So you were in HR, and somehow HR and supply chain procurement collided for you. So walk me through how that happened.
Okay, so fast forward, gosh, so I've been with Omnia Partners now for 12 years. So my girlfriend, Sonda, was working at this company. First we had worked together at a staffing company, and met each other while my husband was stationed at West Point. We met each other in New York through this staffing company we both worked for. When I moved to Arizona, this is in 2004, and she had moved back to Ohio from New York. She went to work for this company called Corporate United. And I know you're very familiar with Corporate United, Sarah.
Yeah, I think when we first met, you were at Corporate United.
I was, because Omnia Partners acquired, Omnia Partners has been in business for over 20 years. But part of the acquisition, very strong M&A focus, right? Or just the acquisition focus. They acquired Corporate United in September of 2017. But through my bouncing around in the military and going from place to place, I landed out of comp and ben, I landed in the staffing industry, met Sonda. And then, long story short, in the early 2000s, I came to Arizona. She went to Cleveland, Ohio, and went to work for this company, Corporate United. And for, I think it was like 4 to 5 years, we chat and talk all the time. And she was just always so dang happy. And I just couldn't believe this company that she worked for. She told me what they do, it was a GPO, and she had all these, members and these supplier relationships. And it was just really cool. I really thought it was interesting. And it took me 5 years of just really kind of waiting for the opportunity to open up. But she finally introduced me to the president at that time in late 2010, and to this model and to the leadership there. And I landed a role to run their West takeover, actually Sonda's position, because they were growing so fast. She had to concentrate on the East, and I was brought in to take over her area where she was basically national and focus on the West. I think I was employee like around 20 or so. And so it was really who I knew, that how I landed in the procurement world, right? And I didn't have a clue, because we sell, we speak to, we support, and we work with procurement professionals. And I'm like, wait a second, when I was in staffing in a sales role, the CPOs, procurement, like, you stay clear of those guys.
They were like
like, like, what are you talking about? I want to build a relationship and learn what they do and how they do it. I'm like, so, I've always been one to kind of self-learn, a lot of reading, get involved with the local associations. That's when I was introduced to ISM, Institute of Supply Chain, there in Arizona. And I immediately got involved to try to understand and learn and network with fellow procurement professionals. And that was the beginning of my procurement or purchasing career. And I just could not be in a better place. Like, it's the most amazing industry. I think, I know hands down, I work for the best purchasing organization out there. And I couldn't imagine getting out of this industry.
So you work at a GPO. I'd like to have you explain to those who are with us today or tuning in afterwards via recording, what is a GPO? I think there's actually a fair amount of people that work in our industry that don't know what a GPO is.
Yeah, it's I sure didn't, but I didn't work in our industry, but I had never heard, and it was kind of like, wait a second, if that's what you do, why is everyone not a member of a group purchasing organization? So GPO, group purchasing organization. Now at Omnia Partners, Yes, we're a GPO, but we far exceed anything that's out there from a typical GPO. But in the generic term, if you will, for a GPO, a group purchasing organization, is leveraged buying power, right? So working with your members of the group purchasing organization, or your participants that are buying from a cooperative, is what you'll typically hear in the public sector space, the city, state, and local government space. Working and buying off contracts that are either on the private sector side, so solicited on behalf of the contracting team, negotiating strong service level agreements and contractual pricing and strong contracts so that you can leverage that relationship versus go out and build yourself. And on the public sector side, as there's legislation, and rules, more stringent rules on how they need to contract with suppliers, we work with a lead public agency model, and they go out and they contract with those suppliers, and we assist in the marketing of that contract.
So Barb, let me, so here's how, tell me if this is correct. Here's how I understand in very layman terms what a GPO is. So to me, I think of the hotel industry. If I work at a big hotel like a Marriott, I could go out and try to secure and source all the suppliers myself. Or I could go partner with a GPO who already has contracts and relationships in place with all the major things that I buy, and I could just piggyback off their existing contracts to save me tremendous time and money.
You nailed it, Sarah, and no, you cannot have my job. But we are hiring.
So that's, in my mind, I think of GPOs and I think of hotels.
Very good. Yeah, I haven't heard that before, but absolutely. I know my, a common example that I've used in the past, right, is office supplies, right? Everybody can think of pens, paper. Instead of, even take your largest, your Fortune 100 company, right? Instead of them having to go out and build an RFP and solicit these suppliers and negotiate what it costs for a big pen, right? Instead of them having to work and focus on that, let's focus on our strategic relationships and what have you, and let's streamline that process and go through a group purchasing organization, again, to expedite that process. We've already solicited the arrangements with the key suppliers out there. We have contracts ready to use. If you're on the public, in the public arena at a city, state, or locale, chances are you can search the website and see what contracts are already in place. Can I use that cooperative agreement, piggyback on that contract, and take advantage of the work that's already been done?
So if for those that are live, if you have any additional questions about what a GPO is or how GPO works, feel free to drop it in the chat, and we'll make sure Barb has a chance to address it. Barb, I want to pivot back, because this show is really about the personal journey of our guest. So your journey of transitioning from HR to the world of GPOs through the strong network that you had built. I want to talk about how you moved up within Omnia Partners to become a VP, because that's a pretty big deal. You didn't go to college, you were a stay-at-home mom, and now you have a big job. So what did you do strategically that helped you get to that level in your company? And I would consider a pretty quick time.
I appreciate that, Sarah. And beyond just a lot of hard work and focus, I think, again, and I mentioned this earlier, I really, I lean on not only my network, but just really always be learning. I say that often. You should always be educating yourself looking into interesting, different opportunities, embracing change. I had a desire to learn more about our organization. You know, I was, for the first 10 years of my career with CU, then Omnia Partners, I was all in the private sector West, part of the organization. And we do so much more. And I was, beyond reading and learning practicing and building on my own personal skills, how to be a good leader, regardless if I had anybody reporting to me or not, right? I think we're all leaders in our world, in our community, as a parent, a lot of reading and a lot of self-education, a lot of networking, a lot of, learning what makes Sarah tick. How does she do what she does? How does she always putting herself out there and meeting all these people and building this network? How getting involved with ISM, volunteering for the board of directors and putting in that extra effort to learn from others and meet with others. I want to say that I made it to this role by showing interest outside of just my own personal space and role, putting myself out there, and then taking the opportunity to learn. And a whole lot of luck, maybe.
I think luck factors into everything that happens in life, whether we like to admit it or not.
Yeah.
So what do you do in your new role? Like, what is your job? Because I think a GPO is a really interesting career path, and there may be some people that have not heard of it, or maybe they're interested in exploring a career in the world of GPOs. And I do want to call out, we have Tina Smith, who gave us a GPO definition. She said GPOs are able to leverage collective higher volume amounts to get better pricing and terms as well. Good call out, Tina.
Thank you, Tina. I would, so not all GPOs are equal, right? So yes, the base is leveraged pricing and contracts. What I do in my role, I don't believe, I'm 99.9% sure that there are other GPOs out there that don't have the breadth and depth of resources that our organization brings to the table. And that's one of those roles and responsibilities is mine and my colleagues within what we call partner development. So think of it as, in the typical procurement office, right? It would be those maintaining and managing the relationships of the suppliers who, if not being done today, if you're not treating those suppliers like strategic relationships, building upon those relationships to make sure that your business, whatever that is that you do, and that supplier, that it's a mutual partnership and win amongst your business, I don't know how you could be successful, right? So we at Omnia Partners have a focus on those relationships with those suppliers, because if our suppliers are not continuously meeting the SLAs of the contract that we've put in place, meeting the pricing, right? That's kind of the table stakes. If they're not meeting those, but if they're not building their business, focusing on the members, the member companies or the participating agencies of that purchasing, of our organization, but of a GPO, bringing innovation and continuously improving upon that contract, then there's no value for any three parties, right? So going back to my initial statement, most GPOs do not have this role. A lot of GPOs, and let me take that back. They might have a contract manager, right, who's negotiating the terms and the SLAs and putting that contract in place. But what are they doing to manage that relationship and to make sure that it's exceeding and delivering upon what was negotiated, and making sure the needs of the members are met, and, oh, by the way, the needs of the suppliers are met? Because if they're not all in, why do they need to put these agreements in place for those members? So it's very much a triangle relationship. And our specific roles are to maintain and manage those supplier relationships, to make sure they're getting what they need from all the resources that are within our organization, and to make sure the members are happy and getting what they need, and the suppliers, everybody's happy.
Mm-hmm. So Barb, it's really interesting. Your role to me kind of illustrates my whole belief around the importance of suppliers, and that suppliers should be your most important stakeholder at your organization, not your internal team. Your team is important, but your suppliers, in my opinion, are the most important stakeholder. And my world is now in direct materials and manufacturing. And manufacturers had it rough and still do, especially if they're dependent upon chips coming in from other countries. And Absolutely. The manufacturers that won and the manufacturers that continue to win are the ones that have strategic relationships with their suppliers, that are the customer of choice. So when there is a limited supply, they are getting their orders fulfilled. And the other manufacturers who did not treat their suppliers well are not getting the supply they need.
You're absolutely spot on. I couldn't agree with you more. Those suppliers have customers as well, right? And those suppliers have suppliers and customers, and it's just like a vicious circle, right? And if you don't treat others like you wish to be treated, it doesn't work. So yeah, my team especially, we are focused 100% on making sure that those suppliers, like I said, are meeting the needs of the member company, but they're happy and they're getting what they need from us as well, and that we're continuing to grow and innovate and bring the organization strong contracts. And without their growth, we don't grow. And quite honestly, the members won't see value or benefit in the suppliers. And you nailed it. There are, especially in the manufacturing industry, I think the days are done of treating your suppliers with disrespect, right? Or not respecting the supplier relationship, rather.
So I was interviewed for a publication that came out a couple days ago. And they asked me my thought on what sort of experience people need to have to be successful in supply chain. And I actually said, and I absolutely believe this, I don't think you need to have a procurement or supply chain background to be a good buyer, to be a good leader in our industry. To me, it's so important to have people, communication, relationship management skills more than anything else. You can learn how to read a contract. You can read how to negotiate a contract. You can understand you can be taught a lot of things. But I think those skills are so important and are going to be the future of the industry. And I think you're going to see less job descriptions with must have 15 years of experience buying rubber.
Right.
Or must have 15 years experience buying parts, because a lot of that manual work that role was done has been automated, and that industry experience, in my opinion, becomes less relevant. It's more about the innovation and the relationship management piece. So with that, I want to get your take on what skills you think are important for people now who are working in our industry. When I say our industry, I'll keep that a little bit broader. It may be a GPO, or it may be working in another capacity in supply chain, but maybe pick out 2 or 3 skills that you think are just really important in 2023.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think strong relationship building skills, right? The ability to build a relationship and understand a person for the person, and not, just, you nailed it. Strong relationship management skills. Independent thinking, right? not out of the box, but maybe, you know, if that's, but independent thinking, the ability to entrepreneurship, right? So ownership, general business skills, like, you know, how to sell. I think we used to talk about this a lot, gosh, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I know at the ISM conferences, or, you know, at the different conferences or whatever, it was all about selling skills within the procurement and purchasing supply chain industry, right? The ability to, and I think that's important. Salesmanship and the ability to sell yourself is important, I think, in any role, right? In a parent role, right? The ability to sell and gain respect from another, whether it's a little 2-year-old or a teenager or a supplier or a stakeholder within the organization. You have to have the ability to share and sell a challenge. So I think those would be the, you know, strong relationships, sell, and salesmanship.
Mm-hmm. What advice would you have for people that are wanting to move up in their career like you did? So you started out, I mean, you started your career entry level, you became a director, and now you're a VP. Like, what are some key things that people can action on to start building up to get that next role?
I'm going to say you have to take the opportunity to educate yourself. Whether that, and it's not necessarily college, there's trade schools, reading, just, you can't stress enough the importance of for me, reading and networking. I believe it's so important on who you know versus what you know. I know that sounds very counterintuitive, but it's so important. I wouldn't be with this organization today if I didn't know Sonda. And I didn't put, you know, take my HR background and my staffing background and convince them to give me an opportunity and try me out in this, you know, procurement world, in this purchasing world. So I think the most important advice I would say is to read and always be learning.
How do you stay sane in your job and life? Because I feel like you juggle so much. You're a grandma, you and your husband travel all over the world, you work a ton. Like, how do you handle all that?
I mean, there's meds. I'm just kidding, but I'm not. I put a lot into my mental and physical self, right? So I'm a strong believer in meditation and exercise and trying my darndest to eat right. I don't always do it, but I try to eat well. And I also I am very hard on myself, strict on myself to keep office hours. And I forget what conference, it might have been SHRM or the Society for Human Resource Management. I think it was one of the conferences. There was a great keynote speaker. Actually, it was Ariana Huffington spoke about keeping office hours and putting your phone to bed at night. And I don't know if anybody's tried this, but the ability to lay your tasks out and put a time frame on yourself, and so will honestly help you to get tasks done within that time frame. And so I think that keeps me sane, being organized, planning my days, putting into myself as much as I do my work. And then again, I also love what I do. So I think it's super important to find something in your job or in your world, do your darndest to love what you do. Because that old corny saying, you'll never work a day in your life, it's so, so true. I literally enjoy and I can tell you I'm as sane as it's going to get right now. Because I love what I do. Got the family at home. I keep my hours. I've got wonderful colleagues. Like I don't have a problem with sanity right now. And I'm sure there are some of you that would challenge that.
So you said you had some technology or tools that you wanted to share or talk about today?
Actually, so the tools that I was going to talk about is just my own personal tools, right? So I don't have any technology, although, I mean, I could go on for days, talk about, so for here, let me just let's do a plug for Omnia Partners real quick. We are driven by technology and data enablement and so forth. And we are, I love what you do, Sarah, at SourceDay. I wish our paths crossed, you know, so we could get some business going together. I would love nothing more, but kind of a different little realm that we're in now versus where we used to be. But we are, from a technology standpoint, our organization is putting all kinds of revenue and executive level buy-in and build out of our technology and data enablement for our organization, for our members, for our suppliers, to be able to see what's going on via that technology and so forth. But really the tools that I was talking about and doing a little taunting on LinkedIn was more about reading and, you know, organizing yourself and networking and just kind of more tricks and tools of the trade, right? How to stay sane and how to climb the career ladder and keep plugging away and be honest and put yourself out there, you know, challenge yourself to do things that you wouldn't do ordinarily.
So you used to use some device where you would electronically take notes?
Oh, I still use that bad boy.
So can you share with us what this is? Because I know you were obsessed with it when you got it.
Okay, I'm still obsessed. And I think personally, if anybody out there from Remarkable's listening, maybe I could do a commercial, get a few for my colleagues because they're amazing. Shout out to Remarkable. If you don't have one, you should try it out. But it's an electronic notebook. My kids, we get them for the kids, for guests. You know, they're awesome for college. They're awesome for to stay organized and, you know, for any career field. But it's just an electronic notebook, tablet of paper that's interfaces with your computer and your iPhone or your, you know, I'm sure it works with Android, all the good things. But it's fantastic.
Drop us a note in the chat if you have a Remarkable. We'll see if there's anyone else who's a Remarkable groupie here on the call today. So Barb, we're going to move into our Spitfire round. This is where I'm going to ask you a question and you're going to say the first word or phrase that comes to mind. Accomplishment you are most proud of?
Raising my kids.
Quality you admire most in yourself?
Honesty.
What's your dream?
To live in the cul-de-sac with all my kids and all my grandbabies, lots of grandbabies.
AKA commune.
Yes.
Biggest pet peeve?
I don't think I have one. Disorganization.
Favorite thing to do in your downtime?
Family time. Most important, summertime, it's pool time with the grandbabies.
What are you binging?
Oh gosh, I'm so bad with names and titles. Hold on. It's probably, I'm not binging it because the episodes, truth be told, it's on Apple TV, but it's coming out on Fridays. So I can't binge it. I'm already caught up.
Favorite thing you've read recently?
Becoming. Hasn't been very, I reread it with my daughter on the road, re-listened, Audible, Becoming by Michelle Obama. Fantastic book.
And bucket list item you're going to accomplish this year?
I'm going to marry off my daughter.
And with that, I want to thank all of you who were able to join us live. I recommend reaching out and connecting with Barb on LinkedIn. She posts a lot of awesome content about supply chain, women in our industry, and all things GPO. Our show next month is on Wednesday, April 19th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. See you all then.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for having me, and happy